Hi, my name is Giovanni Capriotti and I'm a documentary photographer and photojournalist, or like my little daughter say, I'm just a photographer. So I'm being asked which one is the difference between shooting a topic that has been assigned to me by a publication, an editor, or whoever is assigning me the topic, and my personal work, or some kind of work that I pursue out of these, normal structure of the industry. Let's say that when I receive an assignment, the first step for me is to check what the story is about and trying to understand how I can shoot this story. Either it's a 15-minute story, a 2-hour story, a 3-day story, or a month story. Obviously, if it's a 1-day story, most likely only one picture or 2 pictures will be used. If it's, if I have a little bit more time, like 2-3 days, it's going to be more pictures involved. So I like to say that I'm getting hired by editors and universities and whichever client I have because of my ability to tell a story through images. So my approach, if I have to shoot something that is composed only by one image or is composed by 10 or more images, my approach is pretty much the same. The first step is trying to understand what's the story about, what are the elements of the story, and how visual these elements are. Then at that point, I can understand what I gotta go there and shoot and create a frame that most likely is including all these elements that are visual and that are conveying the message that the story is supposed to do. At that point, I have to say that many times when I go and shoot something that has been assigned to me, not necessarily is something that I'm interested in. But like I said, at that point, personal ethic, or personal work ethic, it's the most important part of the approach that I take when I go shoot these things, because I need to perform at my standard, or what I consider a really good standard for myself. Why do I do that? First, like I said, it's personal work ethic. Secondly, it's very practical. I want to be hired again by the same publication, editor, magazine, or whoever is hiring me. Therefore, I gotta go there and do the best as I can and leave the people that are supporting that story or producing that story happy with my work. Why do I do that? Many times to support my other ventures or my personal projects, I need funding. Therefore, a big part of the funding that I utilized to produce the other stories, the one that really matter to me in terms of passion, the money for this story comes mostly from the assignments that I shoot. So I pay the bills, I support my family through the assignments, but I even use the money that I make to shoot other stories. To shoot other stories, I can use even grants, but I need to apply for them and I need to compete with other photographers. So it's not guaranteed that every time I'm going to get the same grant. So let's say that assignments are my main work, but at the same time are even a big portion of the funding that I use for my personal projects. When I'm shooting my personal projects, the approach is pretty much, like I said before, the same. I do a lot of research about the topic, and what I'm trying to do is trying to break that constraint that is coming from the editorial world. The editorial world is moving within a specific structure or a specific news cycle if we're dealing with news. So if I'm doing something that is related to that, my tendency is always to look for a different angle that is not being investigated and it's kind of original, and at the same time is proposing a new perspective on the same topic. Or otherwise I'm looking for other topics that are completely out of the news cycle or the industry, the editorial industry, and I try to pursue them as a personal project, and normally on a long term. So it's not gonna end after a week or after 2 days or after a month or after 3 months. Normally when I talk about long-term projects, I'm talking about, a couple of years or stuff like that, because I really need to investigate the topic specifically. So like I said like I said before, my first step is trying to do a little bit of research, trying to understand how visual is this topic and how I can develop a visual narrative that is original, catchy, and at the same time, it's conveying a specific message. Then eventually, I need to establish if I want to go for a linear narrative or a non-linear one. When I say non-linear, I mean something that is based upon visual allegories or metaphors, while a linear one is something that is more, like the word says, linear, so it's more related to the event, what is happening, and maybe sometime their chronological sequence. So these are pretty much the different approaches that I take when I shoot something that is assigned and something that is not assigned. There's a common ground, which is the research. There are my skills of telling or being, able to tell a story through images. And then the third part, and this is related specifically to the type of personal work that I do, is the constraint that I have with the editorial world. You think that when you do personal work, you have no constraints, but sometimes you do and you don't even realize that because you're always thinking, who am I going to sell this project to? So once you do that, you may be lucky and sell your project to many publications and make money. But are you entirely free for what you do? Maybe. But if I have to start in advance thinking, okay, I'm going to shoot this because this is going to go on that publication and then it's going to probably do well in that award or it's going to do probably well in that specific grant, then I don't think that I'm being honest to myself or true to myself and the type of personal work that I want to do. So the difference between assigned work and personal work lays in the fact that when I'm getting assigned, I'm looking or I'm pursuing the authorship of somebody else. When I'm doing my own things, I'm pursuing and celebrating fully my authorship.